The unit circle is an essential tool used to solve for the sine, cosine, and tangent of an angle. But how does it work and what information do you need to know in order to use it? In this lesson, we will explain what the unit circle is and why you should know it. The unit circle is a circle with a radius of 1. This means that for any straight line drawn from the center point of the circle to any point along the edge of the circle, the length of that line will always equal 1. This also means that the diameter of the circle will equal 2 since the diameter is equal to twice the length of the radius. Typically, the center point of the unit circle is where the x-axis and y-axis intersect or at the coordinates 0 and 0. The unit circle or trig-circle, as it's also known, is useful to know because it lets us easily calculate the cosine, sine, and tangent of any angle between 0 degree and 360 degree or 0 and 2 pi radians. As you can see in the above diagram, by drawing a radius at any angle marked by x in the image, you will be creating a right triangle. On this triangle, the cosine is the horizontal line and the sine is the vertical line. In other words, cosine is equals to x coordinate and sine is equals to y coordinate. The triangle's longest line or hypotenuse is the radius and therefore equals 1. Why is all of this important? Remember that you can solve for the lengths of the sides of a triangle using the Pythagorean theorem, or a squared plus b squared is equals to c squared, in which a and b are the lengths of the sides of the triangle and c is the length of the hypotenuse. We know that the cosine of an angle is equal to the length of the horizontal line, the sine is equal to the length of the vertical line, and the hypotenuse is equal to 1. Therefore, we can say that the formula for any right triangle in the unit circle is as follows. Cos squared theta plus sin squared theta is equals to 1 squared. Since 1 squared is equals to 1, we can simplify this equation like this. Cos squared theta plus sin squared theta is equals to 1. Be aware that these values can be negative depending on the angle formed and what quadrant the x and y coordinates fall in. Here is an overview of all major angles in degrees and radians on the unit circle. But what if there's no triangle form? Let's look at what happens when the angle is 0 degree, creating a horizontal straight line along the x-axis. On this line, the x-coordinate equals 1 and the y-coordinate equals 0. We know that the cosine is equal to the x-coordinate and the sine is equal to the y-coordinate. So we can write this: cos 0 degree is equals to 1 and sine 0 degree is equals to 0. What if the angle is 90 degree and makes a perfectly vertical line along the y-axis? Here, we can see that the x-coordinate equals 0 and the y-coordinates equals 1. This gives us the following values for sine and cosine. Cos 90 degree is equals to 0 and sine 90 degrees equals to 1.
Why you should know the unit circle? The unit circle is helpful because it allows us to easily solve for the sine, cosine, or tangent of any degree or radian. It's especially useful to know the unit circle chart if you need to solve for certain trigonometric values for math homework or if you're preparing to study calculus. But how exactly can knowing the unit circle help you? Let's say you're given the problem of sine 30 degrees and you're not allowed to use any calculator to solve it. Here is the unit of chart with all major angles in both degrees and radians and their corresponding coordinates. Remember, all you're solving for is sine 30 degrees. By looking at this chart, we can see that the y-coordinate is equal to 1/2 at 30 degrees. And since the y-coordinate equals sine, our answer is sine 30 degrees is equals to 1/2. But what if you get a problem that uses radians instead of degrees. The process for solving it is still the same. For example, you get a problem that looks like this. Again, using the chart above, we can see that the x-coordinate or cosine for 3 pi over 4, which is equal to 135 degrees, is negative square root of 2 over 2. Here's what our answer to this problem would look like. It is cosine quantity 3 pi over 4 quantity is equals to negative square root of 2 over 2. All of this is pretty easy if you have the unit circle chart above to use as a reference. But most of the time, if not at all, this won't be the case, and you'll be expected to answer these types of math questions using your brain only.
How to remember the unit circle.
Number 1. Memorize common angles and coordinates. In order to use the unit circle effectively, you'll need to memorize the most common angles in both degrees and radians, as well as their corresponding x and y coordinates. That is the chart listing the same information in the table form. Now, while you're more than welcome to try to memorize all these coordinates and angles, this is a lot of stuff to remember. Fortunately, this is a trick you can use to help you remember the most important part of the unit circle. Look at the coordinates above and you'll notice a clear pattern. All points excluding those at 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 270 degrees, and 360 degrees alternate between just 3 values, whether positive or negative. 1 over 2, square root of 2 over 2, square root of 3 over 2. Each value corresponds to short, medium, or long line, both cosine and sine. Here's what this length means. Short horizontal or vertical line is equal to 1 over 2. Medium horizontal or vertical line is equal to square root of 2 over 2. Long horizontal or vertical line is equal to square root of 3 over 2. For example, if you're trying to solve cosine pi over 3, you should know right away that this angle, which is equal to 60 degrees, indicates a short horizontal line on the unit circle. Therefore, its corresponding x-coordinate must equal to 1/2, a positive value since pi over 3 creates a point in the first quadrant of the coordinate system. While it's helpful to memorize all the angles in the table, note that by far the most important angles to remember are the following: 30 degrees over pi over 6, 45 degrees over pi over 4, 60 degrees over pi over 3.
Learn what's negative and what's positive. It's critical to be able to distinguish positive and negative x and y coordinates so that you're finding the correct value for a tried problem. As a reminder, whether a coordinate on a unit circle will be positive or negative depends on which quadrant the point falls under. So, for example, this is the x coordinate. Well, this is the y coordinate. This is the first quadrant, second quadrant, third quadrant, and the fourth quadrant. So, sa first quadrant, ang magiging sign natin dito is positive and positive. Sa second quadrant is negative and positive. Sa third quadrant naman ay negative and negative. At sa fourth quadrant is positive and negative. So, ang unang bababanggit dito palagi is x-coordinate. Ito, x-coordinate siya lagi. Here's a chart showing whether a coordinate will be positive or negative based on the quadrant a particular angle in degrees or radians is in. So, this is the quadrant. 1, 2, 3, and 4. X coordinate which is cosine, and the y coordinate which is sine. So, nasabi ko na kanina, ang first quadrant is positive and positive. Ang second quadrant is negative and positive. Ang third quadrant is negative and negative, while ang fourth quadrant is positive and negative. For example, say you're given the following problem on a math test. So, yung problem is cosine 210 degrees. Before you even try to solve it, you should be able to recognize that the answer will be a negative number, since the angle 210 degrees falls in quadrant 3. So, yung 210 degrees ay nasa quadrant 3 siya. So, nandito siya sa negative, negative, and negative. Now, using the trick we learned in tip 1, you can figure out that the angle 210 degrees creates a long horizontal line. Therefore, our answer is as follows. So, yung cosine ng 210 degrees, ang radiant niya is negative square root of 3 over 2.
How to evaluate tangent function in a unit circle. So for today, we are going to solve what are the tangents of the following questions. Tangent 30 degrees, tangent 45 degrees, and tangent 60 degrees. For you to solve that, you first need to know what the cosine is. Must remember that sine represents the y-coordinate, cosine represents the x-coordinate, and tangent represents the relationship between the y and the x-coordinate. Want to answer this question, we must first find the particular coordinates in the unit circle. So if we look at the first quadrant, we can see that 60 degrees have a coordinate of 1 over 2 and square root of 3 over 2. 45 degrees has the coordinate of square root of 2 over 2 and square root of 2 over 2. And the 30 degrees have a coordinate of square root of 3 over 2 and 1/2. First problem, all we have to do is to plug in all the coordinates to its proper places. So, tangent y over x will be tangent 30 degrees 1/2 over square root of 3 over 2. We're going to reciprocal square root of 3 over 2. That will be 2 over square root of 3. If we're going to cancel that out, that will be equal to 1. What we multiply below will also be applied in the upper part of the equation. So it will be 1 over 2 times 2 over square root of 3. 1/2 times 2 over square root of 3 will be equal to 1 over square root of 3. We are going to rationalize square root of 3. So at the final result, we have square root of 3 over 3. That is the tangent of 30 degrees. Better understanding, let's go to the next question. Going to apply the same process for the second question. For tangent 45 degrees, we have square root of 2 over 2 divided by square root of 2 over 2. We must always remember that any number that is divided by itself is always be equal to 1. So the answer is 1. In this case, 60 degrees have the coordinates with the same denominator. So all we have to do is cancel 2. So we have square root of 3 over 1, then divide them, then the answer. Question, let us find what is the tangent of 300 degrees. So its coordinate is square root of 3 over 2 and 1/2. We're going to apply that to the equation. Negative square root of 3 over 2 divided by 1/2 will be equal to negative square root of 3. And that is how easily you can evaluate the tangent function on a unit circle. Hope you learned a lot for today. Thank you.
Noong elementary tayo, ginagamit natin yung kamay natin to multiply. Ngayon, pwede rin natin itong gamitin to find the cosine, sine, and tangent of an angle. Evaluating the unit circle, left-hand trick. Ito yung gagamitin natin. Square root, number fingers, over 2. To evaluate cosine, we have cos theta is equals to square root, number fingers left, over 2. So, it means na yung fingers na matitira sa left, yun yung kukunin natin. Then, to evaluate sine, we have sine theta is equals to square root, number fingers right, over 2. So, yung mga matitira naman na fingers sa right, yun yung kukunin natin. And lastly, to evaluate tangent, we have tan theta is equals to square root, number fingers right, over square root, number fingers left. Label the hand 0, pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, and pi over 2. First, imagine your left hand palm is in the first quadrant of the unit circle. Second, lower the finger that represents the desired angle. Third, to find cos theta of an angle, square root of the number of fingers to the left of your bent finger divided by 2. Fourth, to find sine theta of an angle, square root of the number of fingers to the right of your bent finger divided by 2. And lastly, to find tan theta of an angle, square root of the number of fingers to the right divided by the square root of the number of fingers to the left. Here's an example. Evaluate cos theta, sin theta, and tan theta for pi over 3. So, ito yung pi over 3 natin. Sabi kanina sa second step, lower the finger that represent the desired angle. And then sabi sa third step, to evaluate cos theta of an angle, square root of the number of fingers to the left of your bent finger divided by 2. So, cos pi over 3 is equals to square root number fingers left over 2 is equals to square root. So, ilan ba yung natira sa left natin? 1, di ba? Then, square root of 1 over 2 is equals to 1 over 2. To evaluate sine of an angle, square root of the number of fingers to the right of your bent finger divided by 2. So, we have sine pi over 3 is equals to square root number fingers right over 2. Ilan ba yung natira sa right natin? 3. So, equals square root of 3 over 2. And last, to evaluate tangent of an angle, square root of the number of answer to the right divided by the square root of the number of finger to the left. Tan pi over 3 is equals to square root number of fingers right, so it will be 3 over square root number of fingers left, so it will be square root of 1. Then our answer will be square root of 3 over 1, or square root of 3. Kanina, nilabel natin yung fingers natin sa radians. Ngayon naman, ililabel natin ito sa degrees. So, meron tayong 0 degrees, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 60 degrees, and 90 degrees. So, kagaya lang din sa ginawa kanina, gagamitan natin ito ng square root number fingers over 2. So, example, sine 30 degree. So, sine yung hinahanap natin. And, so, ito yung 30 degree natin. Sabi kanina, sa sine, number fingers right. So, yung matitirang fingers sa right, which is 1. Then, nalagay lang natin square root 1 over 2 is equals to 1 over 2 or 1/2. So, kapag sa cosine naman, cosine 30 degrees equals to square root number fingers left. So, ilan ba yung natirang fingers sa left? 3. So, magiging square root of 3 over 2. That's all. Thank you.